Before we dive into this incredible story of overcoming adversity and a stunning reversal, subscribe to the channel and leave a like so you don't miss any shocking videos. The city's courthouse was packed that Tuesday morning. It was one of those cases that grabs media attention. A major pharmaceutical company being sued by a family who lost their mother after she used a defective medication. On the company's side were three impeccable lawyers, designer suits, Italian leather briefcases, confidence plastered on their faces. On the other side, a 67-year-old woman, gray hair tied in a simple bun, old-fashioned glasses, carrying a worn-out document folder. Dr. Helena Mendonça had been a lawyer for 42 years. Graduating when it was still rare to see women in law, she built her career defending the weakest. But in recent years, something had changed. A neurological condition began to affect her speech, creating a stammer that intensified during stressful moments. Colleagues started whispering that she was finished, that she should retire, that she was making a fool of herself. Judge Dr. Augusto Ferreira hammered his gavel. You may begin with opening arguments. The pharmaceutical company's lawyers rose first. Dr. Ricardo Almeida, known for never having lost a corporate case, began his usual performance. Imposing voice, calculated gestures, arguments that sounded more like theater than justice. Your Honor, MediPharma has always followed all safety protocols required by Anvisa. The medication in question was tested for years, approved by competent bodies, and saved thousands of lives. Isolated cases of adverse reactions are an inevitable medical reality, clearly described in the leaflet. The Silva family, while deserving our compassion, cannot hold a company responsible for a medical fatality.
The audience murmured approval.
The jurors took careful notes. It was a solid, well-constructed, convincing defense. Dr. Ricardo discreetly smiled at his colleagues before sitting down. Dr. Helena, you may proceed with your opening arguments, said the judge, looking at his watch almost impatiently.
Elena slowly stood up.
Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses. She walked to the center of the courtroom, and for a moment, there was complete silence. Then she opened her mouth to speak.
Y, Your Honor. The word came out broken, interrupted.
One of the interns in the audience quietly laughed. Dr. Ricardo subtly rolled his eyes. I would like to begin. Doctor, perhaps you need a glass of water? Asked the judge, with a forced patience that everyone noticed. No, thank you, I see can. Helena took a deep breath, but the stammer continued. The Silva family, they lost. The words struggled to come out. In the audience, some young lawyers exchanged quick glances. One of them whispered to his colleague, "Poor thing, she should have retired years ago." Dr. Ricardo leaned over to his colleagues. "This is going to be easier than we thought." Helena stopped. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, something had changed. Not the stammer, it was still there. But in her eyes, there was a determination that cut through the air like a blade. "Why, Your Honor," she began again, and this time her voice, even stammering, carried an authority that made the entire courtroom pay attention. I represent here not only the Silva family. I represent every P person who trusted the P promise of H healing and found D death. She opened her worn folder and pulled out a document.
This is MediPharma's internal protocol.
A document that they tried to keep as secret for 16 years. Dr. Ricardo straightened in his chair, the smile vanishing from his face. In this document, Helena continued, her stammer now seeming to punctuate each revelation with dramatic impact, it's proven that the company, it knew about the deadly side effects since the first test in 2008. Knew, and decided to hide it. The courtroom was in absolute silence. Helena walked slowly, showing the document to the jurors. MediPharma not only knew the risks, it calculated that it would be cheaper to pay compensation than to recall the medication from the market.
Objection!
Dr. Ricardo shouted, standing up abruptly. This document was not presented in the discovery phase. Helena smiled for the first time. A small smile, but one that carried decades of experience. Why, Your Honor, the document W was indeed presented. Page 247 of the process, line 15 to 23. What the defense failed to do was read carefully. The judge quickly flipped through the records. His expression completely changed. The attorney is correct.
The document is in the records. Objection denied. Dottore Riccardo Paled.
His colleagues began desperately flipping through their papers. Helena continued, now with a confidence that transformed her stammer into an almost hypnotic rhythm. But this isn't everything. Medipharma, it also falsified data in the clinical trials. She pulled out another document. This report, obtained through an anonymous source inside the company itself, shows that S6 patients died during the tests. 6 deaths that were classified as unrelated to the medication. The audience began to murmur. The jurors leaned forward. The judge had stopped looking at his watch.
Dottore M. Marcus Weber.
Medipharma's scientific director at the time. He documented his concerns in internal emails. Emails that Helena paused dramatically, that the company tried to delete, but which were recovered by our IT expert. Dr. Ricardo was visibly nervous now, whispering urgently with his colleagues. Helena approached the jurors. Her voice, though still stammering, now resonated with passion and authority. USC, when I started to stammer, 3 years ago, people started to treat me differently. As if my mind had weakened along with my speech. But I continue to be the same lawyer who studied every comma of every C contract, who memorized every article of the Civil Code, who never gave up fighting for justice. She turned to Dr. Ricardo. Medipharma, it bet that you would see an old stammering lawyer, and think it would be easy to defeat me. They counted on my apparent weakness. Helena returned to the center of the courtroom. But I have something that they never had. I have the truth.
And the truth, it doesn't stammer.
She opened one last document. This is the autopsy report of Maria Silva. She did not die from cardiac complications, as Medipharma claimed. She died from a specific toxic reaction, a reaction that the company knew could happen, and about which they never warned doctors. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Dr. Ricardo seemed to have shrunk in his chair. Why, Your Honor, members of the jury. Helena concluded, her voice now firm despite the stammer, I don't just ask for justice for the Silva family. I ask for justice for all the families who will still use this medication if we don't act today. Medipharma needs to be held accountable, not only for what it did, but for what it continues to do. She put away her documents and returned to her table. The interns who had laughed before now watched her with respect. The jurors seemed visibly moved. The judge himself was impressed. During the break, Dr. Ricardo approached Helena. Doctor, perhaps we can discuss a settlement. Helena looked at him over her glasses. Now you want to negotiate?
After betting on my weakness.
That's not what that's exactly it.
Elena interrupted.
US saw an elderly woman with a stammer, and thought it would be easy.
But you forgo one important thing. What thing?
Helena smiled.
De tu no am Elena Mendonca.
And in 42 years of career,
even never lost a case when the truth was on my side.
The trial continued for 2 more days. Medipharma's witnesses crumbled one by one before the evidence presented by Helena. Dr. Marcus Weber, called to testify, confirmed everything she had alleged. The company tried to argue technical issues, but Helena knew every detail, every loophole, every legal precedent. When the jury retired to deliberate, Helena remained seated in silence. A young lawyer approached her.
Dottore Elena.
I wanted to apologize. I was among those who laughed when you started speaking. Helena looked at him kindly. No need to apologize, young man. We all judge by appearances. Sometimes. The important thing is to learn from our mistakes. How did you manage to gather all that evidence? It was incredible. Helena smiled. You know, when people started to underestimate me, because of the stammer, I realized that it gave me an advantage. They let their guard down, said things in front of me that they would never say near other lawyers. Pharma, it underestimated me so much that it forgot to hide the evidence properly. The jury returned after 2 hours of deliberation. The verdict was unanimous. Pharma was guilty of gross negligence, concealment of evidence, and endangering lives. The compensation was 15 million Brazilian reais for the Silva family, in addition to the obligation to withdraw the medication from the market and warn all doctors about the risks. When the judge announced the sentence, the audience erupted in applause. Helena remained seated, emotional but dignified. Dr. Ricardo and his colleagues left the courtroom with their heads down. Later, outside the courthouse, journalists surrounded Helena. "Doctor, how do you feel after this historic victory?" Helena adjusted her glasses and smiled. "I feel as I have always felt. Like a lawyer who fights for justice. The stammer. It hasn't changed who I am. It just changed how people view me. And sometimes, that can be an advantage. Do you have any advice for young lawyers?" "Yes," Helena replied, her voice clear despite the stammer. Never underestimate anyone. The weakest person in the room might be exactly the one who will defeat you. And remember, the truth doesn't need a perfect voice to be heard. It just needs someone brave enough to speak. That night, Helena returned home to her simple apartment, filled with law books. She sat in her favorite armchair, placed her glasses on the side table, and smiled. Tomorrow there would be other cases, other injustices to fight. And she would be ready. The stammer was still there. But now Helena knew it wasn't a weakness, it was just a part of who she was. And who she was stronger than anyone had ever imagined. What did you think of this twist? Share in the comments and tell me, have you ever underestimated someone and regretted it? And don't forget to subscribe and like for more stories like this.